with total precision, because one month we may have an excess of activity associated with detaining and then advancing through the court process minors who have been essentially taken from their homes. And let's not forget that that's what this is about, taking kids from their homes. And some months are busier than others, and that's an activity that is difficult to predict, when it's going to be more busy than other times. And so, it may be that we have more court activity down the line, like in the form of an appeal or the like, or contested hearing. So, in terms of totally predicting which month that it's going to be stable across the board, that's hard to.
But the history is they're generally pretty close.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's
Yes,
what
sir.
I'm trying to get at.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Bob, being that the not on the agenda for May and June is not correct, should we not take
Well,
action on that?
It is correct in the sense that the second amendment that's being proposed is to $32,500, and that is what is set forth in the attachment to the budget. The way that it was worded, a person could conclude that the May and June bills were for $32,500. That would be their conclusion, but the documents certainly support the proposition that it's the second amendment that's for $32,500. Did I answer your question?
I just want to be sure that was clear.
I believe it is. And if, even if it wasn't clear, then what did we do? Did we overstate and overnotice on the agenda an amount? I don't see any assurance.
All I can say is county council is confusing. I thought the second amendment was about guns.
Today, the second amendment is different.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, the one thing I would like to point out in here, reading this, we have 10,000, we have 20,000, you have 20,000 again. You have 5,500.00. There's nothing in there that has a dollar sign in front of it or dollars behind it. I mean, somebody might, I would like to see that delineated a little bit, because when you first come out of 10,000, is that hours or is that going to be, just,
Yes, sir.
I would like to see that cleaned up a little bit there in the future going forward, so that there's no confusion. Please.
And if I could
Yes, sir.
add to that, instead of us kind of lurching along every couple of months, coming back with a second amendment, a third amendment, and doing that, and 10,000 here and 20,000 there, is that what it would be nice to have, I think this was a contract that emerged mid-year, so that's why it was a new contract. It was meant to be for a short period of time, but now it appears it's going to be over a longer, extended period of time, that maybe we should have a full appropriation for the full year and a clear understanding. I mean, if it's $5,500 or $6,000 a month, $6,000 a month is $72,000 a year. So I can tell you right now, $32,000 isn't going to cut it. You're going to be back looking for at least another $40,000 over the next several months. So,
Well, let's make sure, because I'm thinking perhaps we have a misunderstanding. The packet plainly stated that there were two items being requested. One was an amendment to the contract that existed, that was created earlier in the year, to deal specifically with the bills that are currently in existence or work that has already been done. But that there is a new contract also being proposed, which is included, which will cover the entire upcoming fiscal year, for which dollar signs are attached.
there's two parts to the action.
Yes, sir. And that there is also an attendant revenue amount included in the proposed budget at H2, which was passed some moments ago. And so we've been through the budget committee on that. We think that this deals with, number one, the bills that were presented that remain unpaid, that kind of occurred in the transition time in the Office of County Council.
We haven't done H2 yet, but that's okay.
No, I understand, but what I'm saying is that we went through the budget process, and that's included in that as well. So we're trying to deal with the bills that are outstanding, but also the long-term solution. And that's why you're seeing me coming to you in July rather than at the last meeting or the meeting before, when I had two bills waiting to be paid. I wanted a long-term solution. It took me some time to solicit and then acquire a proposed long-term contract from Coca-Cola, basically, and that's the second part of the item. So, I hope I answered your question, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Alrighty, so before we take any action, I'll go to the public comment. Anyone who would like to comment on this agenda item? Eileen?
Eileen Spencer, familyhealth.com. There's no, could I get the fund and also the line item account number? Normally they're on there.
As I indicated in my memo to the board, that is to be paid both for the May and June bills, but also for the proposed contract for this coming fiscal year out of the professional and special services line item out of the Office of County Council. The number of that being, I think the last is 2200, but I'm not certain of that
I
entirely.
can assist with that.
Thank you very much.
It's been paid out of Fund 100, budget unit 0141, account number 300, 2300.
23. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Who needs computers?
So she's got a computer here.
Alrighty,
Thank you.
is there anyone else who'd like to comment? Hi,
I just kind of want to help Bob clarify the situation with county council. In last fiscal year's budget, 60% of the deputy county council was reimbursed by CPS for their time and services. In the ongoing budget, that position will be fully funded by general fund, not covered by CPS partially.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll bring it back we'll bring it back to the board. Is there, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to authorize the chairman and CEO to sign the second amendment in existing contract with Coca-Cola. Is that right?
Coca-Cola.
Oops, it says go on one
That's your error.
C-O-T-A-C-O-L.
Correct.
In an amount sufficient to pay the May and June 2014 bills. And to consider authorizing the chairman and CEO to sign the proposed contract for legal services with Coca-Cola for 2014-15.
Thank you.
Yes, I got it.
I second.
Okay, very good. It's been moved and seconded. Did you have a comment? Yeah, we've taken public comment, but I'll go ahead. I want to make sure you.
Yeah, I was trying to get in before you ended the public
Oh,
comment.
I'm sorry.
I was just wanting to state, there was a misunderstanding here with these numbers a few minutes ago with Bob. I've dealt a lot in my life with numbers and amounts and dollars, and I would just feel more comfortable if we got all the amounts correct with the dollar signs in front of the appropriate amounts, and then bring that back for a proper vote.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right. Bob, can you just slide that quickly before we take?
Certainly. The numbers that I expressed in my memorandum did not have a dollar sign before or after. But they were expressed in terms of 20,000, period. In the attachments to the memorandum, which include the Second Amendment and also the proposed contract, dollar signs are included. And I don't think that there can be any ambiguity that we were talking about US dollars when we were discussing those. The issue on the agenda associated with the 32,500 is correctly stated, but others could interpret that or conclude that that was the amount of the May and June bills. That was not the case. It was plainly included on the attachment, the Second Amendment, that it was the cap on the contract.
All right, so we'll leave it up to the decision of the board to take any public comment. Thanks for that, so.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion and a second.
I guess we could say the motion would include those changes. clarification.
Okay.
Would that help?
Just in the minutes, clarify just in the minutes.
Whatever the board's pleasure is.
I'm still concerned with the May and June bill of 32,005. I don't see the harm in correcting it and then bringing it back for a vote. To not minimize the ambiguity, but just to get rid of it.
Well, does our packet, is the attachment, is it indicate May and June bills?
Let me look. The memo around certainly does, yes.
It does, yeah.
Chairman, I would just make a note of those, the dollar signs on the memorandum in case for Mr. Burns to help clarify that for not only myself, but people, for everybody else, just so there'd be a clear understanding, so they wouldn't have to read farther into the packet to speak the whole.
Yes, sir.
That was my comment.
There is no ambiguity at all that the Second Amendment says on its face that the maximum amount to be paid under the contract would be $32,500 US.
Not South African rand, we get a good deal if we pay in rand.
Well, it's got the dollar sign there, and so,
Right, and what it says, and I see it different after you explain it, you know, in the amount sufficient, and then there's enough money to pay the bills.
Understood.
May and June bills, of 32,000. That's not saying the May and June bills are 32,000, and that's how I did read it myself. First, but after clarification of council, I can see that that's not what it says.
But you needed a clarification of council.
I
That's
did
my
need
concern.
clarification of council, you're correct, I mean, that's why we got council, CAO, Melanie, and staff here, because a lot of this stuff is not clear to us, and we have to ask staff, the appropriate staff members, exactly clarify this for our understanding, so we do understand it correctly.
Understood. My only concern was to make it so we don't need a clarification of council, that it's clear on its face.
Well, I think a lot of things aren't clear to us that aren't expertise in certain
True.
fields, and that's again why we have staff members here to clarify things that maybe are not, maybe are written correctly, but we're just not expertise in them issues, so we don't understand, and then we have to ask questions, and then they are clarified. This doesn't make sense to me now, which it didn't before.
Bob, what page are the May and June bills on?
I did not include the May and June
Oh.
bills with the packet. Typically, the legal bills, there would probably be some redactions on, there's some references to specific cases that I wouldn't normally
Okay.
publish by way of public record.
Okay, well, thanks.
So I'm satisfied with the clarification. If I wasn't, still didn't understand it. I mean, I did ask the question earlier, should it be taken off the agenda, your agenda item, but in the discussion, I'm satisfied with the clarification.
I just thought that would make it cleaner, but it's your call. I love you guys anyway.
I think it is clean again with the clarification. If I still didn't feel it was, then I would not have made the motion.
Anyhow,
I
thanks.
hope that satisfies your misunderstanding. We both misunderstood these things when we did read the motion, the agenda item.
All right, well, thanks, let's move on, so I need to refresh my memory, it's been moved and
We
seconded.
need to vote.
Okay, very good. All righty, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay, thank you.
And with that, I'll make this representation. I'll work double hard to make sure there's no ambiguity there. Thank you, Mr. State.
Be sure it's not just, lawyer talk. It's the kind of language that's common folks.
Oh, I know.
So much for your quick item, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. All right,
And I appreciate the public comments on that.
okay, let's move on to item D2, and this has to deal with the Senate Bill 1139. I'll let Richard give the
Sure. The board, we considered this item last week, and the request from some of our constituents was for the board to oppose SB 1139 which would require the state's utilities to acquire a certain percentage of new geothermal power. Our constituents believe that that would come directly at the expense of biomass energy and therefore biomass jobs, which are important, of course, to our community. And so we drafted a letter essentially encouraging the assembly members to not adopt that legislation and to make more of a level playing field for all the energy users. And with that, I think I'll let Mr. Hawley wants to address the board regarding this issue. Before he gets up, I will mention that this was a significant topic of discussion at the Coordination Council last night, and I think it was generally the consensus of that council also.
Well, the council did take action.
Yeah, you're right, supporting the letter, so.
Good morning, everyone. Well, thank you for the opportunity to address the board of supervisors. These are packets for everyone. My name is Pat Hawley. I'm the general manager of Honey Lake Power. Also have the pleasure of serving as the chairman of the California Biomass Energy Alliance. I'm joined today by Mark Schaefer, our fuel manager, who will talk about what happens when contracts are threatened with these plants. And Elma is here, Teresa Phillips is here as well. They're in opposition to the bill as well. Although I would be glad to talk about our Second Amendment rights. Bob spent so much time on today. We probably don't need to go there. Again, thank you for giving us a few moments. I've given you a handout that gives you the basic nuts and bolts of the bill. The bill will shut down existing biomass and existing geothermal contracts in the state of California, because the utilities have already testified that for every megawatt of this new geothermal that the bill calls for, they will not recontract with an existing resource that already provides geothermal and biomass. The bill will eliminate jobs and tax revenues. The authors of the bill say that it will increase the economic development in the Salton Sea area. That's their objective. So we would transfer jobs from all over California to the Salton Sea is the intent of the bill. It's strongly supported by the IDEW, the pension fund, wishes to invest in transmission systems in Southern California. The bill is opposed by the largest geothermal operator in the state, Calpine. They've been in the business a long time. They've got plants on the line right now running just fine. The utilities will not recontract if this bill goes into effect. The bill is opposed by California Biomass Energy Alliance, the group that I represent. This is 34 biomass power plants around the state, 600 megawatts, 2,000 to 2,500 jobs on the line. The bill is opposed by Pacific Gas and Electric Company. They've made a strong statement in front of the Assembly. I've attached their letter in their written comments. And just to give you one of their statements, PG&E will shift away from procurement of all RPS eligible technologies, including new resources or recontracted sources with existing resources. So that's geothermal and biomass and wind and anyone who's eligible RPS. So with that, I did include a few letters. Humboldt County is also in opposition. I've included the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors letter. I've approached Shasta County. They're working on it this week. They have 4 plants, I believe, within their county. So that's what we're asking for. Is we're asking for board assistance here on a legislative initiative that's intended to favor one specific group and one specific technology. We believe in a level playing field. We always comment to that effect at the legislature. So with all of that, we thank you for your consideration and of this opposition letter. And I'd like to introduce Mark Schaefer, our Wood Fuel Manager, to talk about.
Before we do that, Supervisor Chapman.
I just had one comment. I appreciate your presentation. I wasn't able to be at the part of the meeting last week when it was discussed. I understand some of the testimony was concerning the potential for new development in terms of resources we have here in the county. specifically with geothermal. But I've been following this bill, and I've actually been watching the legislative hearings as well as the floor debates. Both the Senate and the Assembly have been wrangling over this here. Brian Dolly, our representative, sits on the Natural Resources Committee. This bill was actually before that committee about 10 days ago. Anybody can go on the net, you go to the California legislature, they actually post, you can see them live, but they post all the previous sessions can be played back on demand, and it's a very interesting debate. But I think one point that seems to get lost in the discussion and the rhetoric is the fact that with this particular bill, the intent of this bill with the 500 new megawatts is to specifically put it into Imperial and Riverside County. So that's where the transfer of the jobs go. Not only does it collapse, you might say, the biomass and the wind and the existing geothermal and solar activities around the rest of the state, but it basically precludes new development of those resources in the other parts of the state as well. So the notion that by not supporting this bill, we turn off or shut down any potential development of our resource. I can tell you, folks, if this bill passes, the focus of that investment is going to be for that 500 megawatts down in that southeast part of the state at the expense of the rest of the state. So anybody who wants to do solar or wants to do wind or geothermal development in Lassen County, in addition to our existing biomass here, would be basically shut down or shut out as an effect of this particular bill. So it's far more reaching than just collapsing our existing thing. It really precludes any new development throughout the rest of the state. And I don't think that's really the intent that we want to see go forward. And I think in our communication to the committee in the letter, I think that needs to be emphasized as well.
Absolutely.
And I really appreciate you guys taking the time to come, because I felt, it did need a good, explanation and the insight, given by those like yourselves that are able to.
We're glad to come and do it. It's amazing how far the bill went and how quickly the bill went. We thought it had no legs. The bill didn't get a single amendment through energy and natural resources, so it's flying through. It's going to be a floor fight. We'll also ask everyone to make phone calls as well. I've attached a list of assemblymen and their phone numbers, and we'll send out a note to alert everybody when it is expected to come to the floor.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you. Mark Schaefer.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
I'm Mark Schaefer. I'm the fuel supply manager for HL Power, and also appreciate the opportunity to speak on this issue. Just wanted to remind everybody that in the last 10 years, we've had 6 power plants that impact this area shut down. 5 of those have been within the last 5 years. That's a total of about 84 megawatts, I think, or 82 megawatts I had on there. And approximate capacity of about 750,000 bone dry tons a year. That's 50,000 to 75,000 acres of treatment every year that is sitting idle or has gone away. And the reason that that's happened is in large part due to the lack of security in the power purchase agreements. A lot of these plants have been fighting for years for one, trying to make sure that they have a viable fuel source, 2, dealing with the lack of security in the power purchase agreement end of things. As a result, they've been unable to invest money in their infrastructure, in their maintenance, and it's just become a downward spiral. At this point, we're out here on the east side, really kind of the last man standing. We're still fighting the fuel supply issues, and as we look forward to see what might happen as a result of this bill, if we get in a situation where we're not able to pay the money we need to our suppliers for fuel, if we're not able to reinvest money into the maintenance of the plant, we will also fall into that downward spiral, and it won't be too long before you see that plant out there close as well. So things like this are just one more nail in the coffin, as it were, and we're constantly fighting to try to stay in business with all the different regulations we're dealing with. And we just really appreciate your support in this. Another side note, I know that Mr. Pizzullo stood up and spoke last week about this. I had a chance to visit with him yesterday and talk to him about the letter that you put together. The letter's very specific that you support geothermal as well as biomass. It's just a matter of trying to keep the playing field equitable. I think you've done a good job in explaining that in the letter. I think it does what we would want as well. If something like this does go through, hey, let's have a carve out in there for biomass and wind and solar as well. Let's just make it a level playing field so that we all have a chance to stay in the game. Those are my comments. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate your
Mark,
time.
I have a question. For the biomass stuff, don't the utilities, wouldn't they rather have biomass as their base load than geothermal or wind or solar? It's just
Whatever's cheapest.
It just seems to me like it's a more constant, reliable source for your base load than
Yeah, we have availability 90+% of the year, and that serves our county well too, because we're on the end of the PG&E line, and we know what happens with that. So biomass is a reliable source.
And you guys are a critical part of Elmwood's portfolio?
Actually, we don't purchase power from Money Lake as far as their biomass, but we are in negotiations for 5 megawatts of solar that will be put on their existing plant, basically. So for us, though, the importance of Honey Lake Power is obviously when we have the ILM and PG&E goes down,
Right.
we have firming power. There would have been a whole month in December of 2012 where we wouldn't have had power, and the same when we had the CHIPS fire. So, and as far as developing new geothermal within this territory, there's no transmission right now.
We got that.
We are full, so you can build all you want, but you're not gonna get it out of here. So this bill of 500 megawatts of geothermal does not help Lassen County. It just doesn't. It puts more strain on our system if in fact somebody did try to build here, but that's not gonna happen. I agree with Supervisor Chapman and with what Pat said. This is all based toward saltancy. It's not good for Lassen County.
Last question.
But for the record, Teresa Phillips with Elma.
Yes,
Sorry.
the Energy Services Manager is on it.
You guys are currently in contract with PG&E?
Yeah, we're under an existing amendment, yeah.
Second amendment.
Second amendment.
I think that's a government. But, how long you in contract with PG&E?
We're through 2019 under
Yes.
existing
That's
base.
the long-term contract. We've been negotiating pricing on a 3-year basis. And
Okay.
that's not ideal for us either.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Well, thanks again.
You guys have our support, my support. I'm sure the boards too.
Okay, is there any?
Dave Janae, CAL FIRE, current acting unit chief for the Lassen Modoc Police Unit. And I just wanted to reassure Mark that I did send all of that package you had at the Fire Safe Council. I sent it to the Northern Region Chief for CAL FIRE, and he sent it to our Sacramento division in concern with just this. It's not only jobs, it's blackouts when we have the CHIPS fire, blackouts when we have winter and no power here. It's the tax base that we get out of that. And mainly for me, it's those fuels we remove from the forest floor. That won't happen if we don't have Honey Lake Power. We no longer have Westwood. We no longer have Big Valley. Doubt it if we can get those back. Hopefully we can get something in Big Valley back. But as we lose those, we don't get them back. And the value that that has on my side is enormous as far as the fire safe projects, as far as those timber harvest plans that they have to do something with the tops and the limbs, and it's either scatter. Being able to burn on site is being harder and harder when we have winters like we do this year. They can't pile and burn because those piles are still warm come summertime. And you don't think about that, but that's harder and harder. So to have a place somewhat close that we can get rid of those materials and take that material and make power 24 hours a day, no matter, we have maintenance we have maintenance that it will be down, but the sun's not always out for solar and the wind doesn't always blow. But as long as we can keep pushing chips into the plant, they're still generating power 24/7. So I can limit my comments as far as what I can or can't support on 1139 as a state employee. I work for the governor, but I would say anything that takes less chips out of the forest would be detrimental to my overall goal and mission as far as keeping fires out of the forest. So,
Thanks, Dave. Thank you. Anyone else would like to comment on this? Alrighty, we'll bring it back for action. So, what's the pleasure of the board?
Want to make the motion?
Okay, and yeah, I really appreciate, you guys coming and giving a good explanation for the record of this. Yeah, really helpful, so. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay, so we'll take our 5-minute recess and then we will come back with our 10:30 time certain.